and we're free to go. Go ahead, staff.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining Valley Water's virtual public CEQA scoping meeting on the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. I'm Chris Hakes, Valley Water's Deputy Operating Officer for Dam Safety and Capital Delivery. I'm your MC for today's virtual meeting. Before we get into the presentation, I'd like to turn the floor over to Albert, who will go over some logistics about the Zoom platform.
Thank you, Chris. I am going to screen share real quickly here, just to go over the Zoom platform. Some of us may be familiar, but I know that not everyone is using Zoom always. So we are using the language interpretation feature of Zoom. There is a globe icon on your toolbar. If you need to have Spanish as your language of comfort or to listen into, please select the interpretation button and select Spanish. We have our interpreters already interpreting on that side. And I am going to enable one of our interpreters to describe that process in Spanish. So I'm going to look for Ana here. Just give me 1 second. I think Ana might not be on.
I'm here.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
There you go, Ana. Yep, go ahead, Ana.
Okay. Buenas tardes, yo soy Ana y Armando y Ana vamos a ser sus intérpretes esta tarde. Entonces, si ustedes quieren escuchar esta reunión en español, tienen que darle clic a este icono del globo mundial y le eligen ustedes el idioma español, si es el idioma de su preferencia.
Thank you so much, Ana. And before we move on to our program, I do want to cover how to use Zoom. If you are listening in, that's great. If you are having issues with your audio, please go ahead and call in using the number on the screen and the webinar ID that's listed on our materials. You will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please use the Q&A portal of the Zoom webinar platform. You can also ask your question by raising your hand. I will enable your microphone and you can unmute yourself after that. If you do use the chat box, we recommend not using that for questions. It tends to get buried real fast. Other than that, back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Albert. Now I'd like to provide an overview of today's virtual meeting. We'll have welcome remarks from our Valley Water board members, Director Richard Santos and Director John Varela, who also comprise 2/3 of Valley Water's Water Storage Exploratory Committee. We may also have our Vice Chair, Gary Kremen, join us in order to provide some comments as well. And I do see that we have Director Shua as well on here. So I'm not sure if she's going to provide any comments, but she is present as well. From there, we'll move into our main presentation, which is divided into 2 segments, the scoping presentation and an open house. The scoping presentation will allow Valley Water to share the latest news about the scope and content of the environmental impact report that we're preparing for the Pacheco project. We're encouraging members of the public and agencies to provide comments on the scope and content of the EIR. Comments can be mailed or sent regular mail. We'll provide those addresses during the presentation. Following the presentation, you will all have an opportunity to ask questions about the presentation that you just saw and the project environmental review process. After the presentation and Q&A, we'll move along to the open house portion of the meeting, where we encourage you to share your thoughts and ask more general questions about the project, not just about the presentation. The goal of the open house is to get your feedback on the overall project and allow the community an opportunity to ask questions and share your opinions. Before we hear from our directors, I would like to provide a brief update on recent developments regarding the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. When we applied for our water storage investment program grant in 2017, the application included an initial cost estimate of $969 million for the proposed project. This cost was based on 2015 dollars, which was a requirement of the application. Due to project inflation that affects all projects, the estimated project cost rose to about $1.3 billion in 2019. And then in 2020, we performed a more detailed design study, which included an updated cost estimate. This design study indicated the construction cost for the proposed project had increased to about $2.5 billion. That was prompted largely by major changes to the dam and spillway design associated with the foundation. So that's where we've been and where we currently are. I'm taking a look to see if Director Kremen is online yet. It doesn't look like he is. So I'm going to pass the mic over to, let's see, I believe it's going to be Director Santos. Director Santos, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you very much. And to everybody who's listening, welcome. This is, I'm sure it's going to be a good public testimony in terms of education and so on. All I know is this, that this is a very valuable source of water. We need all we can do to preserve it. I know it's going to be a very tough issue, but people continue to worry about costs, and we all should. But you'll pay more in damage control when you don't take advantage of this great opportunity. So with that, I'm going to sit back, and staff always does a fine job, and looking forward to educating everybody on this source of water that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Santos, for the kind words. Now I'd like to introduce Director John Varela, who's also on the Water Storage Exploratory Committee. Director Varela also represents the district where the Pacheco project is located, District 1. Please welcome Director Varela.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So my name again is John Varela, and I'm the Director on Valley Water Board of Directors representing District 1. As many of you know, we are off to another dry start to this rainfall season. Much of our county is experiencing drought conditions, and we don't know how much more rain we might receive this season. Increasing our ability to store water is a vital part for the region. The Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project's goal is to help ensure a reliable supply of water for all our communities in Santa Clara and San Benito counties. The project aims to reduce the frequency and severity of water shortages during droughts, provide water supply during emergencies, protect infrastructure, and enhance groundwater storage and recharge, and improve the habitat for the native steelhead population, a species federally listed as threatened. In the face of climate change and the risk of more prolonged droughts, we must take strategic measures to protect our water supply. Santa Clara County, 2 million residents are counting on us to ensure we have a safe water supply to support our population growth and a thriving community and thriving economy. So with that, enjoy the afternoon, participate, engage. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Director Varela. I see our Vice Chair, Director Gary Kremen, has joined us. I would like to offer him the opportunity to say a few words before we get into our presentation. Director Kremen.
Hey, thanks, Chris, and welcome everyone for attending today. My name is Gary Kremen. I'm the Vice Chair of the Water District. I represent District 7, stretching all the way up north from Palo Alto, all the way down the Almaden Valley. And I know everyone's busy, and during your busy day, I want to thank you for your interest in the Pacheco Pass Reservoir Expansion Project. Two of our primary project partners, we're not doing this alone. We're doing it with partners, San Benito County Water District, which serves almost all of San Benito County, and Pacheco Pass Water District, which actually owns the current reservoir. I'd like to welcome members of both agencies on the call today. So let's see, I'd like to thank any representatives, any other elected officials who are here, any state, federal, and local folks. I understand that Congressman Lofgren's staffer, Ms. Duncan is here. So I think you know that basically with our, we were lucky enough to place one in Proposition 1 water storage funding. That got us nearly $500 million for this project, and it was the highest rating project of any of the other projects. So we did pretty well because we've been peer reviewed that this is a good project. I think they gave us even some early advance money. So that was really good. So we're gonna really figure out the reason the scoping meetings happening is we want to kind of hear from you, the public, and other stakeholders if this makes sense, and to get any feedback on the project. Could we do it better? Is the design elements, could we do stuff? And of course, we're looking at other stuff, whether it be desal, storage, other storage projects.
Thank you, Director Kremen. You broke up there at the end, but I think we have a second opportunity for you to go ahead and say some words a little bit later on. But thank you for joining, and we did receive some early funding, about $24.2 million, just as you referenced. So that was one of the benefits of being the top-rated project in the Prop 1 grant. Now I'd like to turn things over to Ryan McCarter, Valley Water's project delivery manager for the project. He'll be presenting on the process that we're currently engaged in. After the presentation, there'll be an opportunity to address any questions regarding the project presentation from our virtual audience. With that said, I now turn it over to Ryan McCarter for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Chris. Pull up a PowerPoint presentation here to go through for the scoping meeting. Okay, so the first segment of this presentation will cover the California Environmental Quality Act, otherwise known as CEQA, process and the purpose of the scoping meeting. The items shown in blue on this slide represent the steps in the CEQA process. The initial study and the notice of preparation were released in August 2017, just before the water storage investment program application that was mentioned earlier. The first green box on the right indicates where the project currently stands as the team is beginning to prepare the draft environmental impact report, or EIR. And the second green box notes the actions the team will undertake after public comment on the draft EIR in preparation for the final EIR that is slated for completion in 2023. The purpose of the scoping meeting at this stage is to provide a public update of the project status, provide an opportunity to receive additional public and agency input, and specifically receive input for the scope and content of the EIR as we begin preparing the draft to be released to the public later this year in 2021. The next segment of this presentation will cover the background of the project. The existing dam on the North Fork of Pacheco Creek forms Pacheco Reservoir just north of Pacheco Pass Highway, or State Route 152. The approximately 100-foot tall dam was built in 1939 and impounds up to 5,500 acre-feet of water. Pacheco Pass Water District owns and operates the dam and releases water stored in the reservoir into Pacheco Creek to recharge the downstream groundwater aquifers. The groundwater is then pumped to the surface through wells for agricultural use. It is important to note the existing reservoir facility only has the ability to directly divert water into the creek and has no other conveyance capability, such as a pipeline connection to a water system. Over the years, there have been many historical evaluations related to the Pacheco Reservoir, the most relevant to the current project dating back to the 1990s. California's Proposition 1 of 2014 dedicated $2.7 billion for investments in water storage projects. As mentioned earlier, the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project's 2017 application for this water storage investment program scored highest out of the 8 projects that received eligibility for conditional funding administered by the California Water Commission. The Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project is related to a project called the San Luis Low Point Improvement Project, being pursued by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. The San Luis Reservoir provides storage for both state and federal water contractors, and Valley Water imports about 45% of its annual water supply, and over half of that water comes from the San Luis Reservoir through a pumping plant and pipeline called the Pacheco Conduit. In dry years, when the reservoir reaches low levels, the intakes for the pumping plant begin to pull in poor quality water near the surface, and the water level can even drop below the intakes to the pumping plant. The San Luis Low Point Improvement Project intends to resolve this issue, and the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project is one of the 5 action alternatives identified as one of its solutions. In addition to helping solve the low point problem, the Pacheco project offers emergency water supply and improves habitat for steelhead in Pacheco Creek. These 2 efforts can come together as a nexus project that can solve an array of deficiencies. The next segment will describe where the project is located and why it provides a unique opportunity to meet multiple objectives. The Pacheco Reservoir is situated in southeast Santa Clara County, just off State Route 152, about 30 minutes east of Gilroy. San Luis Reservoir is located about 8 miles east of the Pacheco Reservoir. After water from the current Pacheco Reservoir is released into Pacheco Creek, it travels about 17 miles to San Felipe Lake before it makes its way into the Pajaro River. As we face future climate change, potential multi-year droughts, and the water supply outages due to earthquakes or other disasters, Valley Water recognizes a need to develop solutions to these emergencies. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Office of Marine Fisheries has identified the South Central California coast steelhead as a federally threatened species. The Pajaro River watershed that includes Pacheco Creek has been identified as a critical recovery domain needed for these fish. The primary objectives of the project are to meet the needs previously described. While the primary objectives are considered to have equal importance, the secondary objectives will be pursued to the extent possible without adversely affecting the primary objectives. Project alternatives will be described in the following segment. The project team is looking at various alternatives, including a no project alternative. These alternatives have been formed by investigations, analysis, and coordination with stakeholders and regulatory agencies. All of the action alternatives include a new dam upstream of the existing dam, an expanded reservoir and related facilities, a connection to the existing Pacheco conduit that allows imported water from San Luis Reservoir to be pumped into the expanded reservoir and stored until it's needed. Decommissioning and removal of the existing dam, along with restoration of the channel between the sites for the new dam, roadway improvements, power transmission upgrades, and construction material borrow source stockpiling and staging areas. The variations between the action alternatives include 2 different dam sites, 2 reservoir sizes, and 2 dam types. The alternatives also include variations of the operations after construction. The project team has explored 2 dam sites referred to as the upstream and downstream sites. The figure shows the distance relative to Highway 152 and the existing dam. You can see the upstream site would allow for a greater amount of channel restoration between it and the existing dam, which would be new habitat for steelhead and other species. 2 reservoir sizes are being considered as part of the analysis: a 140,000 acre-foot reservoir at each site and a 96,000 acre-foot reservoir at the upstream site. Two different dam types are being considered in the alternatives. Hardfill, which is a newer technology using rock materials from the site that are mixed with cement and compacted. The strength of this material allows for steeper slopes on the dam faces and a smaller footprint. The emergency spillway and inlet-outlet pipelines can be integrated into the Hardfield Dam, allowing reservoir overflows to spill over the body of the structure through a channel. And then there's the Earthville Dam, which is similar to Valley Water's existing dams that would require separate construction work areas for the spillway and inlet-outlet pipelines. The long-term operations variations in the alternatives include 2 flow target scenarios for releases into Pacheco Creek. The original target flow was identified for the Water Storage Investment Program application in 2017, and the refined target flows developed over the past few years with input from state and federal resource agencies, with consideration of the water year type. And these releases are for the steelhead benefit. There are also 2 different participation scenarios in the alternatives for comparison. A scenario without project participation from San Benito County Water District, and another with 10%, which is their maximum anticipated participation. San Benito County Water District is a key partner for this project since their system also directly connects to the Pacheco conduit that delivers imported water from San Luis Reservoir. This is a summary of the preliminary range of alternatives to be assessed in the draft EIR, which will include a no project alternative. And preliminary alternative number 1 represents the original project presented in the initial study and the 2017 Water Storage Investment Program application, while the other alternatives have one or more variations to the original project, which will be covered in greater detail on the subsequent slides. This is a bird's eye view of the expanded reservoir area in blue and a close-up of the new dam and related facilities for alternative number 1. The reddish-brown area represents the proposed dam footprint. The green lines show the arrangement of the new pipelines and pump station to deliver water in and out of the expanded reservoir. The emergency spillway will be located in the brown area shown. The yellow lines show the roads to access the site and the new facilities. And the red lines represent the proposed power transmission line alignment. And these colors are used on the subsequent slides for each alternative as well. And again, this is the downstream earth fill option. Alternative number 2 replaces the earth fill dam with the Hardfield Dam at the downstream site. As mentioned, this integrates the spillway into the body of the dam, as well as the inlet-outlet pipeline arrangement, which significantly reduces the area of ground disturbance. Alternative number 3 moves the earth-filled dam to the upstream site. The preliminary design utilizes a natural slope over the west abutment for the emergency spillway, which is a favorable characteristic of the site when compared to the earth-filled dam at the downstream site. Alternative number 4 has 2 variations from the original concept, with the Hardfield Dam located at the upstream site. As compared to the previous alternative at the upstream site, the Hardfield Dam allows a much smaller construction footprint, with the spillway and pipeline arrangement again integrated within the body of the dam. The last action alternative to be assessed in the EIR is a smaller earth-filled dam at the upstream site with a reservoir size of 96,000 acre-feet. In this next segment, we will review the project impacts to be assessed in the EIR. The activities of the project and effects can be broken down into 3 areas. The reservoir and work areas that would be directly affected by construction activities and inundation with the expanded reservoir. The downstream areas that would be affected by the changes in water flow releases, and water service areas that would be affected by changes in water storage and deliveries. Impacts to the physical environment to be assessed include aesthetics, agricultural and forestry resources, air quality, energy, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, mineral resources, and wildfire. Impacts to biological resources to be assessed include botanical resources, fisheries and aquatic resources, and terrestrial and other wildlife resources. Impacts to the human environment to be assessed include land use and planning, noise, population and housing, transportation and traffic, public services, utilities and service systems, and recreation. Impacts to cultural resources to be assessed include anything with historic or prehistoric importance, and impacts to tribal cultural resources to be assessed include sites, places, cultural landscapes, features, sacred places, and objects with cultural value to Native American tribes. The last segment of this presentation will describe the process for the additional scoping comment period. One of the primary purposes of the virtual scoping meeting we're having today is to solicit input from the public and agencies on the information to be included in the draft EIR. Input may be provided for the range of alternatives, the environmental impacts, and potential mitigation measures. We would like to receive comments by March 12, 2021 to allow time to consider them as we prepare the draft EIR. In order to be considered, comments must be written and emailed to Pacheco Expansion@valleywater.org or mailed to Santa Clara Valley Water District, attention Todd Sexauer, at 5750 Almaden Expressway, San Jose, California 95118. For additional information, please explore our project page on valleywater.org/Pacheco Expansion. You can also find a pre-recorded presentation just like this one, as well as the slides in PDF. Additional questions can also be emailed to Pacheco Expansion@valleywater.org. That concludes the presentation, and I will send it back to Chris.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation as always. Now I would like to open it up to the audience for any questions that you may have on the project information that was just shared with you today. There is the second open house for kind of more general questions, so we'd appreciate it if you do focus your questions on the material that Ryan just discussed or the environmental process in general. You can put your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand. You can also put your questions in chat, but as Albert mentioned, they tend to get buried down there. So the Q&A portal or the raise your hand feature is probably the best bet to get your questions in. Again, we are happy to address questions related to clarifying the presentation itself. Ask that you save the broader questions for the open house that's right after this. Should you have any input that you would like us to consider as we prepare the EIR, then please provide written comment to the email previously provided. Once we've addressed all your questions about the environmental process, we will transition to the open house, where we will be happy to answer additional questions about the Pacheco project. Okay, Albert, you want to give us a quick Zoom reminder?
Absolutely. Just for those joining us on Zoom itself, please enter your questions on the Q&A portal. I'm just going to replace my spotlight here. There you go. To raise your hand to ask a verbal question. Once you raise your hand, we will call out your name and I will enable your microphone. Please unmute yourself following that. If you are speaking or have a question in Spanish, go ahead and ask your question in Spanish. Our interpreter will repeat the question in English for us as well. If you are joining us via Facebook Live, feel free to comment your question. We will transfer it over and ask it live in the Zoom. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Albert. So we've got, well, we had a hand raised, but it seems to have gone down. So we'll go to the Q&A section. I believe that's from Katja Irvin. Is all the information in this presentation in the NOP? I'm going to send that over to Todd. Todd, are you available to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. There's most of the information is available in the NOP for the general project. However, we did look at some additional alternatives that are being considered now that weren't discussed in the original NOP back in 2017. And so those additional items are now that are in the project presentation are not discussed in the NOP.
Thank you, Todd. We have a question from Anne. Hard versus earthen dam, cost difference, and why use older technology? I'm going to send that over to Ryan. Ryan?
Okay, I just had to get unmuted there. Yeah, so the Hardfield Dam is a fairly newer technology. It's similar to roller compacted concrete. And when we went through a large range of alternatives for our engineering analysis, we considered many different types of dams. And the Hardfield Dam did flush out towards the top. Earthfill dams are very common. California DSOD is very comfortable with the Earthfill Dam technology that we have in our current reservoirs. And we are considering the Hardfield Dam as something new that we want to look into in further detail.
Thank you, Ryan. So there's a question related to Hardfield dams that came in via Facebook from Alan. Is the Hardfield Dam option more seismically resilient? Ryan?
I think that comparing the Hardfield Dam and the Earthfield Dam, I don't think one is more seismically resilient than the other, as far as my understanding. We can return back to that question later with more information from our technical design team.
Thank you, Ryan. We do have a hand raise from Swanee. Albert, can we activate Swanee's mic?
Go ahead, unmute yourself, Swanee.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I kind of got in late, but in looking at the map of the proposed dam, I noticed there is an electric line that kind of goes towards the dam and then just kind of ends out in space. Is that existing? And have you thought at all of having a small generating plant there to run your pumps and that kind of thing?
Ryan, I think that one's for you as well.
Yeah, the transmission upgrades needed are at a fairly early stage in the project design process. We have just recently identified the alignment that was shown. There is an existing alignment there, but we do expect to do some power upgrades to the poles and lines in order to generate the capacity needed to operate the pump station. We have considered generators for backup power, but having generators capable of powering the full pump station when needed at full capacity would be probably not feasible.
Thank you, Ryan. Question from Margaret. How long is the estimated construction for the project, Ryan?
Based on the different alternatives, we're looking at a range of 5 to 8 years.
Thank you. We have a question from, I apologize if I mispronounce this, either Loa or Lau. I live in Northeast San Benito County. Regarding the 10% San Benito County participation option, will that translate to 10% availability? I'm gonna send that back to Ryan.
I'd have to check with San Benito County Water District on the details and logistics and on how they plan to do it. For now, the way we're looking at it in the EIR is a range of participation from 0 to 10%, and those are kind of our bookends. It will be up to San Benito County Water District to make the final determination on how much participation they'd like in the project.
Thank you, Ryan. I think Jeff Catania from San Benito County is on the line, and basically we'll make sure that question makes its way to him and get that answer posted to our website as well. Okay, Katja, is this an official NOP? Why wasn't it noticed and posted to SequaNet? I believe that's a question for Todd.
Yes, I believe it's my understanding that it was posted to SequaNet. I'm surprised to hear that it wasn't. We normally, as our normal practice, we do post all of our NOPs to SequaNet. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Todd, I think a clarification. I think Katja was asking if this particular meeting needed a specific NOP. I believe the original project NOP might have been posted previously on SequaNet. Is that correct?
Yes, it's my understanding that it was, but I would have to confirm that because I wasn't on the project at the time. I guess we should have posted it on SequaNet, but for the public scoping meeting, but I guess that was an oversight. We apologize for that.
Okay, thank you, Todd. We have a hand raised from Bill Sherman. Albert, can we activate his mic?
Bill, your mic's activated. Please unmute yourself.
Got it, I think. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I plan on sending in comments, but to help that, I have two questions. The first one, are you aware that the cost that you're presently projecting amounts to over $17,000 per 1 acre foot of capacity added? Most of your supply projects are in the range of $2,000 or less to add 1 cc or 1 acre foot of delivery. So this only adds capacity versus delivery. That's my first question. And secondly, where is the water coming from? What sources will it be coming from to fill the reservoir?
I'll go ahead and take that one and spare Ryan from having to talk on everything. So you're correct. The price per acre foot is higher than what our traditional storage projects are. That's because the use of this facility is different from our traditional operational storage projects. This is an emergency supply facility. So basically what we're looking at is the cost to have water available when water is not available through traditional means, either groundwater, importation, or in our existing supplies. Our board will be considering the cost as it factors into our water supply master plan and our demand projections, and we'll be making a decision moving forward on just how valuable that commodity is to have that safety net to fall back on. So that's the question on cost per acre foot. Bill, can you repeat the second question?
Let me just re-enable him real quick. Hold on. Bill, go ahead and repeat your second part of the question again.
Sorry. The second question is, where is the water coming from? From the Pacheco Reservoir, from the watershed, from the Central Valley projects, et cetera?
So yeah, the reservoir will be fed both locally from the Pacheco watershed and from our supplies in the San Luis Reservoir. Now, currently, the Santa Clara Valley Water District is both a state water contractor and federal CVP contractor. Right now, the intent is to put CVP water into the Pacheco Reservoir. So basically, if we have extra supply in San Benito, rather than spilling and losing that water, we would then import it up into our Pacheco Reservoir and have it for future use. Of course, we'll also collect any water from the local watershed, and depending on the water year, will depend on what kind of balance we have between those two sources. Okay, let's go back to some of our Q&A. I have a question from Stephanie. I'm a bit confused. Where is it going to connect to the existing pipe that is across the freeway? Is it going to be a T-pipe? Or are you going to have and put in a new pipe on land across the freeway? That one's back to you, Ryan.
Yeah, the existing Pacheco conduit does run on the south side of Highway 152. So you're correct about that. And we are looking at putting a T with valves at that location, just south of the reservoir and south of Highway 152. I think that answered the question. I'm not sure if there was another part to that.
No, I think you got it. We have another question from Katja. Where can we find new info that wasn't in the original NOP? Todd?
Here. Oh, there we go. Yes, that was one of the purposes of these two public information scoping meetings to present updated information that has been added since the original NOP was released back in 2017. Also, the open house at the end of these two public scoping meetings will also provide information that wasn't provided in the original NOP.
Thank you, Todd. I actually have two questions from Stephanie in the Q&A that I believe are more of the general questions that we'll be talking in the open house. So we'll save those, and once we transition to the open house section, we'll go ahead and make sure those get answered. Let's see. You're very welcome, Stephanie. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions that are coming or any other people that would like to raise their hand and participate. Okay, I'm not seeing anything right now. We'll give you maybe 2 more minutes just to see if there's any other questions before we transition to the open house. Oh, here's one from Katja. Can new information be provided in writing somewhere for reference? Okay, Todd, you're still on the screen, so why don't you take a shot at that one?
Yeah, I mean, we have our website for the project that we have specific information can be posted on there in writing if there's specific questions that should be answered. So we would be happy to present the information from this presentation as well. And that the completion of these two meetings, those will be posted on our website.
Thank you, Todd. I believe Ryan's presentation is already posted on the website, and of course the recording from this and tomorrow's presentations will be added as well. Katja has a follow-up question. Please study the use of the San Luis dam raise and Los Vaqueros dam raise as an alternative. San Luis dam raise can solve the low point problem, and both projects can provide reliability and emergency supply. The cost will be significantly lower for this alternative. I believe that's more of a commentary than it is a question. Unless you'd like to answer that, Ryan, we'll just say that was read and provided.
No, I don't think there's an answer really available for that. We'd have to look into that further, but please provide that as an official comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, any more questions? Does anyone want to raise their hand and speak? That's always better than me reading questions. You guys get tired of me talking. Okay, not seeing any takers on my offer. Okay, then. It looks, oh, I had a hand go up and a hand go down. So they thought better of it. We'll go ahead and transition to the open house. There's still plenty of time to ask questions. Just to reiterate, thank you everyone for the questions about the scoping presentation and the process. I'm going to hand this back to Albert, but just want to reiterate, send us any questions that you have. We can always add those to the running total that we have on our website. It'll be documented there and you'll get an answer. For any reason, if we can't answer the question, we'll always get back to you. So I'm going to turn it over to Albert, who's going to switch us to the open house. He's going to be your host.
All right, good afternoon. Before we do that, I'm just going to change my virtual background here. Just give me 1 second. Normally in a in-person time frame, we would be having a in-person meeting. You would have this presentation and you would have an opportunity to ask questions of our staff in this very open house style format. So we are going to transition to our open house format. I've changed my background. And then also I want to review what this open house portion is going to be like. I'm going to share my screen briefly here. Give me 1 second. So the open house, we're going to do some Zoom polling. This is going to offer us an opportunity to really ask some questions and get a feel for the community sentiment among certain topics. You'll also have an opportunity to reflect a little more on, or expand a little further on your response to these Zoom poll questions. You can also provide questions as it relates to the topics. And of course, at the end, what we don't cover, we can have the floor open to other questions as well. Now, in terms of topics for these open house portion, we're going to be asking questions about the project benefits, concerns about the project itself, recreation activities, cost impacts from the project, support with the project, and also other future approaches to our water supply. Before I go on to the first question, I'm just going to make sure I'm everything set here on my end technically. What I'm going to do is have this question on the screen, but I also will put the question up on your screen through Zoom polls. For those who are joining us via Facebook, you can provide your questions or responses on our SurveyMonkey. I'm going to post that into the chat right now. We have a Spanish version and an English version for everyone's reference. So I'm putting that in right now for those who would like to do that on there. And I'll do the same on Facebook right now as well for their benefit. All right, going to the first question, you're going to see a Zoom poll pop up on your screen. I will read the question for you while you should see it on your screen. So the first question about the project benefits. The proposed expansion of Pacheco Reservoir will provide multiple benefits. Which benefits do you support? Please check all that apply. And once we have responses in, we will provide an open floor for you to expand further about what you support, about the project benefits, and what questions you may have about it as well. I can see the responses are coming in. So just to review some of the answer choices, is it increased water supply reliability, availability of water during a drought or emergency, fish habitat improvement in Pacheco Creek, incidental flood reduction for communities along Pacheco, potential recreation opportunities, which will have a question expanding further on that, or you do not support any of the benefits. Once we hit about we're getting close to about half the response here. And for those who might have walked away to grab a snack or might have used the restroom, please come on back and feel free to answer the poll question. All right, I'm gonna give about another 10 seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Gonna share these results with everyone and kind of just recap briefly. So it looks like a lot of us in attendance are very supportive of the benefit of our water supply reliability and the availability of water during the droughts. I also see some strong support as well for fish habitat and incidental flood reduction. What I'm going to do now is provide an opportunity for you to provide comments into our Q&A portal or to raise your hand and share with the floor about why you may have answered the way you did. Keeping an eye out here for our Q&A portal. Any raised hands as well? If not, we can move on to the next question. 5, 4, 3, and 1. All right, we're just going to move on to the next question here. So the next question I will also be sharing on your screen via the Zoom poll. And again, if you may have missed a question or may have missed a response, an opportunity to respond, there's the Survey Monkey as well. I'm going to launch the poll here. You should be able to see it on your end. This is related to project cost. What concerns do you have about the project concerns? What concerns do you have about the project? Is it the cost of the project estimated at $2.5 billion? Is it the potential impacts to Henry Cove State Park, which the expanded reservoir could affect up to 20 acres of the 87,000 acre park itself? That's not, this portion of the park is not necessarily accessible to the public. Is it impacts to Highway 152? I know sometimes that can get backed up during a SoCal trip as well. Do you have concerns about the water? Is it too much water? Is it not enough? Do you have concerns about the environmental impacts, or do you have other concerns? For environmental impacts or other concerns, there is an opportunity to really expand further on that through our Q&A portal, the raising your hand. And if you're answering via Survey Monkey, there's a little text box as well. Unfortunately, Zoom polls does not offer a text box for us to have the option here as well. All right, we're gonna give another 10 seconds here for people to respond. Right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're gonna share these results with everyone. All right, so there is a major sentiment of concern related to the project costs. I also see that environment impacts also has a significant concern as well. If you have comments or further things you want to share about why that may be a concern to you, please put it in the Q&A box, the chat box, or even on raising your hand as well. I'm gonna give everyone a little opportunity here. And Stephanie, I do have your questions from earlier. We will be asking that later on. I have a raised hand here from Bob Patchy. Bob, please unmute yourself and ask your question or provide your comment.
During the previous San Luis Reservoir Low Point Improvement Project, a commitment was made that none of Henry W. Cove State Park would be impacted by a reservoir expansion. Now you're saying that up to 20 acres could be impacted. Which of those two assertions by the Water District is correct?
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to provide an opportunity for staff in case they have a response. See, Ryan, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I can answer that. The San Luis Reservoir Low Point Improvement Project documents that went out in the public, they did consider the Pacheco Reservoir expansion as one of their alternatives. And that one alternative is pretty close to what we considered or were presented as alternative number 1, the Downstream Earthfill project. Now that alternative does not have a direct impact to Henry Cove State Park. However, there are 2 alternatives at the Upstream site and 140,000 acre-foot reservoirs that do encroach into Henry Cove about 3/4 of a mile up the creek and consume about 20 acres of the area there. So we're looking at all the alternatives.
Great, thank you. Bob may have a follow-up question. Bob, go ahead.
If it's okay for you guys to consider flooding 20 acres of Cove Park, why not institute your original dam proposal that would have inundated, I think 1,000 acres, in the original proposal. I think 0 is a good number. How about you?
Yeah, 0 impact is always a good number. However, we're looking at these different alternatives. 1,000 acres would surely be a dramatic impact on Henry Cove State Park, and we were cognizant of protecting the lands there. So we're considering that as an alternative, and we're going to assess the impacts.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Bob, for your question. We're going to move on to our next polling question here. I'm going to stop the sharing of these results and move on to our next slide. This is going to be related to recreation activities. So I'm going to launch this poll here. So if it's possible to include as part of the project, what types of recreation activities would you like to see at the reservoir? Please check all that apply. Do Do you prefer to see more hiking and trails there? You want to see some fishing opportunities, boating opportunities, perhaps camping, equestrian use if you're into horse riding, of course. You also may have the sentiment that you prefer not to have any recreation activities at all provided at the potential project site. And if you want something that's not listed, feel free to click other and definitely share as part of the Q&A portal or raise hand. We do seeing all these responses come in. Thank you again for participating. This makes it much more engaging when we have your vote and your voice here as well. And definitely don't feel free to raise your hand as well as we move on to these discussion portions. All right, it's another 5 seconds here. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end that polling. I'm going to share these results. As many of you, like myself, enjoy hiking, it's definitely something that we would like all to see as a potential improvement, public benefit for this project if it's possible. I see camping as well as an opportunity. I know that many of us are very cooped inside and can use some outdoor enjoyment as well with the camping. Fishing is also a strong support or strong preference there as a potential project benefit with recreation. As well. And then so if you have any other feedback or comments about why this is important to you, please raise your hand or put it into the Q&A. I did want to recognize that we are have a large attendee population amongst our Zoom and our Facebook Live. I do want to recognize that 75 of our attendees are on the Zoom side and about 7 on our Facebook Live side. I know it is a work day and some of you are joining us via a weekday and during daytime. All right. Anybody would like to raise their hand or provide comment into the Q&A? A question about land management. I know recreation is something that may or may not be somewhat related to land management, but I will ask that question just so we have, just in case if it is related. So Yvette asked, is there a land management plan for the surrounding land? And that can be inclusive of recreation or other things as well, I'm assuming. Let's see here. If Ryan or Todd or even Chris, is this something that you're able to answer?
Yeah, currently the surrounding land, I don't believe there's any land management plan. Most of it is private property. I'm not sure exactly what specifically you were looking for, but as the project develops, we will be looking at the surrounding land and how we can provide mitigation and other management of the land.
Great, thank you. And Yvette, if we didn't cover it quite exactly, please feel free to raise your hand and provide a follow-up question in the Q&A portal as well. All right, we're gonna move along here in our open house portion. Again, thank you for bearing with us in these virtual times. Gonna stop these results shares here and I'm gonna move on to the next one. This is related to project cost. So the cost impacts from the project, I'm gonna put it on the screen, but also read it out loud as well. So I'm gonna read some context first before you respond to the question polls or the answer polls. The current project cost of the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project is about $2.5 billion. Value did receive $496.6 million in provisional funding from the state under the Water Storage Investment Program, and is exploring additional funding sources and potential cost savings with partners. Any gap will be made up through water rates. Please note that Valley Water is the county's primary water wholesaler, and that unless you're a private well owner, future charges or changes to your rates will be determined by your water retailer. Again, future changes to rates will be determined by your future retailer, or future changes to your rates will be determined by your water retailer. Sorry about that. Please select the statement that you agree with the most. So again, I'll read out these statements so you have for your reference. You would support a $1 to $5 increase in your monthly bill to support the expansion of Pacheco, a $6 to $10 increase, an $11 to $15 increase, a $16 to $20 increase, or you would not support any increase in your water bill to help fund the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir. And again, just to remind everyone that any rates that are being charged Again, I'll move the slide back one so you can see it for your reference here. Is that if once you're a private well owner, any future changes to your rates will be determined by your water retailer. And give everyone a few more seconds to answer before we move along here. One too far ahead. We're going to end the polling. Share these results. All right. So it seems a lot of you will be willing to support a $1 to $5 increase to your monthly bill to fund the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir. Majority of you, or a plurality of you, prefer not to see any increase in your water bill to help fund the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir. Some may be willing to support a $6 to $10 increase. Some of you also will be supporting or would be willing to support a $11 to $15 increase, and then a smaller portion of you a $16 to $20 increase. We do have a wide spread here amongst the results, and I think it's to our benefit to hear more about what you may be thinking about how you range your support and how you voted on the poll. So I'm going to open up the floor here in case people want to share further of how they voted and why they voted the way they did. Please feel free to raise your hand or to enter into the Q&A. Again, the Q&A, raising your hand is on a button on your toolbar. I don't see anything in the Q&A and raise hands. Let's move on to our next question. I'm going to stop the share here. Now, these next two questions I'm going to be asking as a tandem. So bear with me. It's going to be related to each other. I'm going to read you a statement first before I pose the poll questions. The increased storage capacity of Pacheco Reservoir would nearly equal the capacity of Valley Water's 10 other reservoirs combined. The project will also reduce the frequency and severity of water storages during droughts, protect our drinking water supply and infrastructure, and improve habitat for fish. So I'm going to put that question up. You'll see two questions at once. So please select the statement you agree with the most for that first question. The second question you'll see is related to the future. So you may be in support of the project strongly or just regular support. You might not support it at all. We do want to know what you may feel also about to do in the future. So I'm going to move that forward here a little bit. What should Valley Water pursue? So as you're thinking about what you feel about the project itself and whether you support it or not, these are these other options about how Valley Water should approach our future with the water supply. So the second question should be on your screen. Make sure you scroll down to see that question. Do you think that Valley Water should pursue partnering with agencies on the regional water supply project that strengthen the reliability of our water supply, or a local multi-benefit water storage project such as the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir? Or do you also support improving our reliability through sustainable use of recycled and purified water? Or do you also support conservation and reducing our water use in general? So I'm going to give some time here to everyone to answer these questions. I'm also going to take a look at our Facebook audience to make sure we don't have any questions or feedback related to that. And again, feel free to also put your response in the SurveyMonkey that's in the chat box as well if you want to provide further color, or if you happen to marinate on your response and want to provide it later on. I'm going to close the poll here in about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So we do have a large portion of our audience in support, strong support of the proposed expansion of Pacheco, and also some of you supporting. So in total, it looks about like 76% of you support the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir. We do have some reservations about that, and I do see that here listed as well. In terms of how Valley Water should move for the future, many of us are supporting all 4 of these routes into the future, and strongly supporting, of course, our reliability of our water supply.
Hey, Albert.
Albert, I'm not seeing that on my screen.
Oh, sorry about that. Here you go. I have too many windows open and too many screens open. Sometimes I forget one button. So just to recap again, most of us are supporting, or most of the audience are supporting the Pacheco Reservoir expansion. So in total, about 76%, 46 on the strong side, and 30 on the general support, with some reservations I see as well. The second part of the question is also in support of, in support of stronger reliability and strengthening reliability of water supply. I did see a hand go up just now, but then it went away. If you have further thoughts you want to share about your response to these questions, for those who can't see the actual second portion, you actually have to scroll down on your own screen with your mouse, or if you're using a tablet, you have to hold and drag it up to see the second result. I'm going to read out the percentages for everyone's benefit here. So for the first question, the support of Pacheco Reservoir, we have 46% supporting the proposed expansion, 30% supporting in general the proposed expansion, 11% not supporting the expansion at all, 5% strongly opposed to the expansion, and about 8% of you don't know quite just yet enough information to make a decision. So just as a reference, 8% is about 3 people, just as a reference point. Moving to the second question here, what should Valley Water pursue to the future? 81% of those voting supporting strengthening the reliability of our water supply by partnering with agencies on regional water projects. 68% of you support local multi-benefit water storage projects such as Pacheco. 70% of you support improving our water supply reliability through sustainable use of recycled and purified water. And then about 65% of you support just conservation and reducing our water use. Again, if you can't see this on your screen, please go ahead and scroll up and down with the window or the scroll toolbar. And if you're on a tablet, use your finger to hold and just drag up on the poll share results. I do want to open the floor here for those who are in attendance and want to share a little further. I know we shared a lot with you today. Please raise your hand or a Q&A. It's entered through the Q&A portal as well. In the meantime, Stephanie, I'm going to ask your questions out loud and have that a response to that. So Stephanie, earlier you asked, so before I answer the next question, so someone mentioned in the chat about increasing the size of the window results. That's going to be on your screen. If you see the line, square, and X in the top of that window, press the square. That's going to maximize the polling question for you and the responses. So you should be able to see more of that. Otherwise, you can scroll using the wheel on your mouse. Getting some feedback echo here. I'm just going to just temporarily just mute. There we go. All right, I'm thinking most folks should be able to see their responses now. I'm going to ask that question from Stephanie. Stephanie asked, are you going to have designated locations for workers to park, place the building materials? Where is everything going to go while the construction is going on? I think this is related to the laydown yard. Ryan, would that be something you could respond to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good question. We do have in our layouts, we have designated staging areas, borrow source materials, storage areas, disposal sites, and everything shown there. And we have started compiling some of those drawings that will be in the draft EIR that show exactly where those areas are. I do not believe any of them are even visible from Pacheco Pass Highway, just to give you an idea of where they are. They mostly surround the existing reservoir and the construction site.
Great, thank you. And then the second question Stephanie asked is, can I have more explanation about where the spillway is going to go? Is it going to be more than currently? Is it going to go further down the side of the freeway?
I'm not familiar with the spillway being close to the freeway. The existing dam this has a spillway and it's adjacent to the dam and the existing Pacheco Reservoir. And similarly, all the alternatives have spillways either adjacent to the dam or within the body of the dam in the case of the Hardfield type dam. So again, those probably wouldn't even be visible from the freeway. So I'm not sure exactly what that references to.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And then just want to open the floor now, since if anyone wants to share a little further on any of the 6 polling questions and their response, feel free to. Or if you have other questions you would like to ask about the project, now is the time to enter that into Q&A portal. Raise your hand. For your reference, the Zoom platform will provide us a little report on how folks responded, and the staff will take that to heart to see how people are responding to these questions in general. You can also provide those responses later on through SurveyMonkey. There's a Spanish version and an English version. We provide that into the chat box. I do see a hand raised now. I'm going to stop the sharing results of the poll questions. I'm going to enable Swanee. I'm tired of hearing myself talk. Please unmute yourself and speak away.
Hi, guys. First of all, I want to thank you all and the Water District for giving us this opportunity to weigh in on this large project. Second of all, I'm going to make a comment about the cost. At $2 billion or $3 billion is well worth the money for what we are going to reap in the future, having a more reliable water supply, etc. And then if you compare it to a huge failure that California high-speed rail is, and the amount of billions approaching now, their budget is 100 million. This project is really necessary. That project is not. And if we can wrap our heads around spending billions in the Central Valley for high-speed rail, it won't be high-speed rail. This dam looks, and its expenses look pretty good to me. So in keeping the costs in context, you know, this would be such a boon to South County especially, and to our total water supply. So for me, the cost is not excessive at all for what we're going to get in return. And if you compare it to other state projects, of course, this isn't a state project, but it will affect a large part of it, the costs are definitely in line. But thank you for the opportunity to give us additional information and allow us to comment. Bye.
Thank you, Swanee. All right, I do have a follow-up question from Stephanie here. So Stephanie mentioned that the current spillway goes across the freeway. It's on the property on the south side, close to where the pipe that it will be connected to with the T-line. So I don't know if that helps clarify things, Ryan, but if we can have asked Stephanie to provide her email to provide some follow-up from staff as well.
Ryan, let me take a stab at that one.
Okay.
I think what Stephanie is actually referring to is the creek or the channel. So Pacheco Creek does flow down across the freeway all the way, all the way down to Lover's Lane. The spillway itself is very localized to the existing dam. It was actually damaged back in 2017. It's private property, so you can't really access it, but there's probably a virtual tour on our website that you can see the damaged spillway. That's the concrete section. All of the new spillways are actually going to be upstream of the existing reservoir, so they would be no closer than they are now, and in fact would be farther away. But I think what you're looking at is the creek bed or the creek channel that's coming across the highway, and that would continue to do that in the same configuration. There might just be additional water flow down that creek, possibly during, most likely during summer, because that's when it's really dry back. But I think you're looking at the creek.
All right, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie offers her thanks for the clarification as well. All right, I did see a hand go up, but it disappeared. If you happen to think of something, again, the SurveyMonkey, and we do have another meeting tomorrow, which I'm pretty sure our closing speakers will remind us about as well. Other than that, I'm going to give everyone a 5-second countdown to raise your hand or ask a Q&A before I turn things back over to Chris. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, thank you everyone for this open house portion. Chris, the floor is back to you.
Thank you, Albert. Ran that expertly. As we're all done with our questions, I'd like to thank you all for joining us and to the Valley Water staff for the presentation and the answers to the questions. We're hosting a second meeting tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30. We'll also post all the list of questions and answers to our website, as we mentioned earlier, at valleywater.org/Pacheco Expansion. With that, I wish everyone a safe and good rest of your afternoon.
We do have a late question coming in. You want to go with that last question?
Sure.
Go for it.
Well, sure, why not? It goes from Mike. I know this is probably a federal project, but I'd like to get your thoughts on the following. There are pipelines all over the US moving oil, gas, etc. Why can't there be pipelines that would bring us water from the areas that regularly flood to the areas that have regular droughts, forest fires, etc.? Sounds like a win-win project to me. That's something that they've actually looked at quite extensively. Usually what prevents those projects from occurring is that they are long runs of pipelines. So basically we have more water in the north, less water in the south. So in order to get the water from where it's plentiful down to where it's not, it's an extremely long run of pipeline. Also, there are several utilities in the way, freeways, several jurisdictions. That's not saying that's not a possibility that could happen. It just takes a tremendous amount of coordination. So obviously we at Valley Water are focused in the activities that we know we can control within the county, which is why we're promoting the Pacheco Reservoir expansion that provides us additional emergency supply in county, because that's a certainty we can control. And that's why we're kind of going on this project. But that's not at all out of left field. I believe that is an idea that's been considered many times over. And in the future, that may be the way the world works. You know, we may be taking, there may be water pipelines that stretch all the way from, you know, the Canadian border down to the Mexican border, just having T's and whatnot to serve the areas that are necessary. But that takes more of a global perspective. And right now we're just controlling what we can. And that does look like the last question. So we'll go ahead and reiterate that there will be another opportunity tomorrow, 5:30. Please join us if you have the time and would like to see anything else, ask anything else, and we can definitely see you then. Otherwise, thank you very much and have a good afternoon.